Thanks, John. My name is Kim Davies. I head up the IANA team. IANA is provided by PTI, which is an affiliate of ICANN. I heard it described earlier today that our operations are boring. That's a high compliment from where I'm from. If we can keep staying boring, that's a pretty good sign. This is the team that provides the IANA services. We currently have 17 people on our team. The way we operate is a lot of people work on a lot of different things, so many of these names are probably recognized by people that use the IANA functions. So I wanted to update you briefly on some of our customer satisfaction work. First is our customer satisfaction survey. Annually, we try to poll all of our customers to try and get a read on what we're doing well, what we can improve on, and any ideas for future prioritization. We segment our customers and we poll them in different ways. When it comes to number resources, our customers there are the RIRs. So we send the annual survey to the CEOs of the 5 RIRs as well as the registration service managers. This year, the participation rate was 25%, which is 10% lower than the previous average. That being said, we're talking about very small numbers here, so I wouldn't read too much into that. Importantly to us, those that did respond were satisfied, so we got a 100% satisfaction rate, which is positive. And no one reported any specific service issues that they wanted to highlight to us in the previous 12 months. Each customer group is asked to rank the different attributes of how we deliver service, and usually they're quite consistent across all our different customer groups. Accuracy ranking highest usually, and timeliness of our service is another priority area for us to focus on. So with that all being said, one challenge that we've had doing these annual surveys is often that the customer groups that we're polling had their interaction with us way in the past, might have been up to 12 months earlier. So asking them to recall how it went, what their experience was like, often results in some scratching of heads, and we often get an explicit response saying, well, don't really remember what it was like. Not so much with the RIR group, but certainly some of our other customer groups. So one thing we're transitioning into is really polling our customers directly after an interaction. So that's something new for 2019. And I'll get to that in a moment. So in terms of the actual results of the overall survey, 96% of the respondents reported being satisfied or very satisfied. And in fact, this year we had the highest satisfaction rate since we started this survey, I think it was 6 or 7 years ago. I won't dive into the specific numbers. They're there on the slides, and you can look at them yourself on the slides, and they're also on our website. So we've called the tool that we're using to do these satisfaction surveys directly after an interaction. We call it How Do We Do? Just quite simply, that's the question we're asking. And it's a very common design pattern you've probably all seen in various different interactions with different companies. The idea is we just send a simple one-question survey to our customers and ask them a simple question: how do we do? Do we do well, or is there room for improvement? Optionally, once you've provided a response, there's a comment field, so if you felt that there was something that there's some actionable follow-up or perhaps a clarifying question, we provide room for that. But this is something new that we now send to our customers after we've finished a request. We only poll people once in a period. I think it's currently 60 days, so we don't want to bombard some of our more regular customers with constantly surveying them. And of course, customers can easily opt out permanently if they don't wish to receive these. In terms of our SLA performance, we've hit our SLAs throughout the last 12 months and longer. All of our SLA performance is on the website. As you heard earlier, there is an annual review committee constituted to look at that performance over the last 12 months and report how it's doing, and their most recent report was favourable. We don't do a lot of change requests for RIRs compared to our other areas of work, so it's a fairly small mission. But nonetheless, it is important, and we strive to meet all the SLAs that have been agreed with the numbering community. I did want to take this opportunity to report an issue that we did have in the month of February. It's not on the slides, but We operate a reverse DNS service that is used by the RARs to publish PTI records in both the IP6.ARPA tree and the IANA.ARPA tree. This is a system that only has access rights for the RARs. And we did have an outage of that system for a couple of days in early February. The root cause of this issue was that we were migrating that system to a new platform, essentially upgrading the operating system and moving virtual machines. But one consequence of that is we restored an older snapshot of the data that was in that system. And this caused a number of knock-on effects that, once identified, were restored into operation. Nonetheless, this, in my view, doesn't meet our standards that we strive to achieve. So it's something that we're identifying the gaps that led to that issue, and we're seeking to correct. We're in dialogue with the NRO ECG to identify anything from the RAR perspective that they would like to see done differently in the future. But it is something that happened in February I wanted to share with you. One thing that's important in our operations is audits. We have third-party audits of our assignment practices as well as our DNSSEC operations. This is one area where we feel that having a third party come in and analyze the way we do our operations, all of the security controls that are in place as well as operational controls is important to give confidence to the community about how we do our work. It's in fact something that was subsequently baked into a lot of our contracts we have with the community groups, and we report on annually. So we just completed our 2018 audit cycle in the last few weeks, and I'm happy to report that our principal audit that is of interest to this community, which is what we call the Registry Assignment and Maintenance Systems, was successfully completed with no exceptions. And also additionally, we do an audit of how we manage the root zone KSK. That was also issued with no exceptions for 2018. So no rest for us. We've already kicked off our 2019 audit program in the last few weeks. The framework that we use, in this case SOC 2, has added additional new requirements for 2019, so-called COSO framework. So that's something we're working to integrate into our operations over the next few months. One thing new that we're working on, specifically for this community, is a new dashboard for RAR allocations. The way that we've done this in the past is a lot of the data that goes into our analysis of whether an RAR is eligible for a new allocation has derived from a dashboard that was actually more of an R&D effort by another part of ICANN. And you know, as is often the way over time, over several years, it's come to be dependent on not just by us, but by RARs as well to quickly see the state of resources for the purposes of working out eligibility for future IANA allocations. That being said, that website was quite ancient. It was driven by Flash, for example, and it wasn't being adequately maintained. So we've gone back to the drawing board and sat down with our RAR customers to work out what should replace it, and we've come up with a sort of a new approach where we have a dashboard that is specifically targeted to displaying RAR eligibility for number resources. This is now actively under development. Here are some screenshots of our internal working system. It's still got some bugs and things to be sorted out, but we expect to be launching it relatively soon. But essentially it lets you look at IPv6 and AS number allocations, eligibility, projections towards when specific RARs will be eligible and so forth. One thing that's missing there is IPv4, but as you can imagine, since we don't really have anything there to give out, we're not planning on having an IPv4 dashboard. Briefly, I've already touched on this, IPv6, we show state of the RAR pools, growth of IPv6 addresses allocated in different regions. What we did do is identify things that don't pertain to IANA allocation policy, and we've stripped them out of the dashboard. So it's now focused just on the task at hand. And this is just a mock-up. It's not indicative of the final result, but we do intend to show projections so that we can sort of identify in what time window we expect RARs to be eligible for another allocation. Speaking of allocation, our actual allocation activity for IPv6, we made an allocation to the RIPE NCC recently. One thing that is notable there is that we only allocated a /22. This was at their request in order to fill a gap in a larger allocation that was made prior to the implementation of the global policy in 2006. We received this specific request. We validated with the NRO EC that this was an appropriate application of the policy, and we agreed that it was appropriate to proceed. So that was done last month. IPv4 allocation. Well, this pretty much summarizes the situation from the IANA perspective. For those that aren't aware, we have a recovered pool, essentially IPv4 addresses that were returned to IANA. And there was a global policy for post-exhaustion IPv4 allocation. In essence, every 6 months we went into our recovered pool, we divided it into fifths, and we allocated what we had in our recovered pool to the RARs. With each subsequent allocation every 6 months, what was in that pool shrunk and shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. In March 2019, we gave each RAR just 2 /24s each. As a consequence to this, we now only have 3 /24s left, and since you can't really practically divide that into 5 equal pieces, it essentially means that this policy is exhausted. So unless we get more IPv4 returned to us, there's really nothing more for us to give according to that policy. So that's it. Happy to take any questions, and I'm also around throughout the rest of the day. I'm happy to speak to anyone.
Any questions for Kim? No? Yes? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.